Hey all, Heretic here. Today in the Battlegrounds, we're going to be talking about Menagerie Minions. We're going to talk about the various builds we can put together using a various slew of minions. Just random stuff that we can put together and hopefully cobble together a win. Let's jump right in. Now first, what is a Menagerie build? When I say that, you're like, wait, Heretic, I know all the different tribes, but what do you mean you say Menagerie? Menagerie is a little bit of everything. Sometimes my chat refers to this as jank. It's when you have a bunch of random minions on your board that are all decent, but you don't have any pieces of a particular build, but then you find yourself kind of buffing them all through various methods, and suddenly you have a lot of random minions that are really powerful. And there's a few ways you can build a Menagerie build. There's been times in the game where Menagerie is incredibly powerful, where you could destroy lobbies just picking and choosing from various tribes, key minions, to put together a big win. But sometimes Menagerie's not that great. Right now, Menagerie's kind of coming back a little bit with some recent changes, but Menagerie's not super strong. But it's still an option, and you have to keep it in mind because sometimes you can't find any one tribe to make it work. Sometimes it'll work with what you find. Let's look into those minions that are going to help us get that direction. So let's start Menagerie with kind of the king of works with anything, Brann. Brann is an old favorite. Brann is a tier 5, 2/4. Your battle cries trigger twice. Well, why is that good? Well, if you have random minions of different types and you're playing various cards that are going to buff those different minions and those different types, you're going to get extra value if you have a bunch of different things. This way you could cycle as many cards as you want. You could cycle cards like Primal Fin. You can cycle cards like Menagerie Mug. You can use all the various spells that based on different tribes. There's just lots of different ways you can buff your board, and Brann is the easiest way to say, hey, I might be Menagerie when, you know, I've got 4 really strong minions in a Brann, but I can't find any pieces to, because they're all different tribes, to make them work. Well, Brann, using enough various buffs, can make them work. So always consider Brann. Here is an example of what a Brann board might look like. Basically, random stuff being buffed by the random cards you find. Is it the most powerful board you run into? No. But it works. And if that's what you find, let's make it work. Next build we're going to look at is one that used to be very strong that now I would kind of advise you against doing, but I want to put it in here just for the purposes of kind of having a little of everything. That is the Walking 4. This tier 6, 4/6 is at the end of your turn, give 4 friendly taunt minions +4/+4. Well, +4/+4 is not a very big buff. By the standards we're used to doing nowadays, that's kind of minimal. But if you have 4 of them, getting 4/4 every turn, that's not bad. And a way you can really make this a lot better is using the minion Drakari Enchanter. This tier 5, 1/5, your end of turns trigger twice, means you're walking 4 plus 4 minions +4/+4 twice. And if you give taunt to the walking 4 and the Drakari Enchanter, now they're buffing themselves and they're buffing the board very effectively. This is a good way to build this out and have this nice end of turn effect. Now, if you can't find the Enchanter, a Primal Staff will work in the short term, but this is only for 1 turn. And while it doesn't take up a spot on the board, it's only going to happen once. Unless you can find a lot of these, and then you're spending 3 gold every turn. I'd much rather just have a Drakari Enchanter in this build with Taunt doing their thing. That way they at least get buffed and everything else is being buffed that we're using. I want to go more than 4 taunts with this. You can, but you really want to maximize those benefits of those taunt buffs. So what I do is I usually taunt 4, then I find 3 utility cards to do more damage to counter what my opponents are up to. They don't use this build very much anymore, but it does still work sometimes. Next, now let's look at a friend who's been nerfed many times and has continuously been kicked every time, but keeps getting back up and is still viable. More difficult to play with now because so many of the pieces and parts of this have been nerfed indirectly, not trying to nerf this, but nerfing other parts of it, has made this build a little harder to pull off, but it's still doable, and when it does work, it is effective. The tier 6, 4/4 Motley Phalanx, taunt, death rattle, give a friendly minion of each type +4/+4. Now the trick with this minion is it's an all-type minion, so it works with everything. If you think of any ability that is a class-specific one, it works with the Motley Phalanx. If you have, say, magnetics, they attach to it. If you have abilities that only target certain tribes, it'll work with this minion because it counts as all. So it's very versatile and can work in every Menagerie build just as a piece to add to them, but it's also a build within itself because you can buff a Menagerie build very effectively if you start buffing the heck out of this thing and triggering it in the various different ways you can. So the Motley Phalanx works with a lot of different things, as you can imagine. Let's just go down the list of some of the things that we could quickly hit. Sprightly Scarab. You can use this to give your phalanx a reborn. Target your phalanx. It's got reborn now, even more effective. You could throw a Hawk Strider Herald at it, which will trigger its death rattle at the start of combat. So before anything happens, your phalanx will buff the whole board, because it's going to buff one of everything, which that's everything, that's all. So your board's going to get buffed pretty quickly with a Herald. You can then throw out a Menagerie if you need reborn. You can get it out of the battle cry with that, so use it that way. You can get a Cultist of Sithara. So do you have a reborn phalanx? Because Cultist of Sithara will summon it back exactly like it was, as long as it was the first demon that died. And if it's your only demon on your board, because it's an all type, even better, now there's no chance anything else can die first. You're more likely to have the Cultist of Sithara die accidentally, say, to a Tunnel Blaster, than you are anything else, because there's no demons. This is the only one that can die, so your trigger's perfect. Maybe you want a board full of phalanxes. Get as many as you can, or just make those buffs permanent. Use an Archlich kel'thuzad. Archlich kel'thuzad is a very nasty way of doing it, because this is at the end of your turn, destroy the undead to the left of this and re-summon it. Well, here's the trick. You haven't seen how this is being done. If they have, say you fight someone and they've got 3 golden Moreaus or 3 golden phalanxes, and you're like, how the hell do they do that? Well, they give reborn to the target that they want to use Archlich kel'thuzad on. Then when kel'thuzad kills them, it summons out an exact copy of what was killed. But since it had reborn, it also summons out the reborn. So if you have room for it, you'll have a version with reborn, and then you'll have the extra one that got summoned out after the first one died that's just sitting there without reborn. But then if you say do it again and you triple them, or if you have a third one in your hand, it'll just be one golden reborn version. And through this, you either are adding permanent stats to your board or printing extra copies, or really just both. And you get major value using kel'thuzad with a phalanx. Now, and if you've got all these triggers, you've got all these extra ways, you're printing copies of it, you're triggering the death rattle, you've got all these extra versions of it, why not field Titus Rivendare also? Titus is going to make your death rattles trigger an extra time. But think of all the things we've talked about, all the different ways you can trigger it. And there's more than what I've mentioned here. I'm just mentioning the most common ones. There's some niche things. But if you then double, there's just one extra charge of all those death rattles. Think about that. A lot of stats. So you definitely can build a phalanx build still, even though it's been nerfed in the ground, being a very effective board. All right, now back from its exile, we're going to look at the Land Lubber build, tier 3, 4/5 elemental pirate. The tavern offers an extra tavern spell after each refresh. This was nerfed into oblivion because it was such a powerful, polarizing way of playing the game. It went from tier 2 to tier 3 and it gained stats. That's nerfing it into oblivion, folks. Here's the problem. Its effect is exactly the same. Now, one of the ways they nerfed this is they nerfed the spells around it, so you couldn't do the same playstyle you used to do, because they moved it into 3. There's a chance you just triple into it and still be able to do the same exact damn build. But now, because some of the spells have been changed, we just have to change it a little bit. Now, I had a lot of people asking me, why isn't this in your Quillboard video? Because this is obviously a Quillboard build. Well, because this is an elemental pirate, folks. This is the Menagerie video. This is where we get we cross different tribe thing, and this really can only be done in Menagerie because of the various ways to make it work. Land Lubber is going to be able to give you those extra spells you need. Very much fits the Menagerie build scheme. Now, here's why. You couple this with the card Paint Smudger. The tier 3, 5/3 Quillbore, whenever you cast a tavern spell, play a blood gem on another friendly McQuillbore. Now, the reason why this is so good is Land Lubber is going to put extra spells in your shop. And then you are going to use the Paint Smudger to, you got it, cast those spells and generate blood gems. So what's going to happen is you're going to be throwing blood gems all over while you're gaining the advantage of these spells, be them economy, stats, whatever. You want to focus on the cheapest spells you can find. If they cost 1 and 2 gold, they're perfect. Do they cost 2 gold and give you a minion? Fantastic. Is it the coin? The coin is probably the most powerful spell. This is S tier now with this build. S tier spell, the tavern coin. You buy a tavern coin that costs 1 gold. Then you have Paint Smudger. Buff your board with blood gems. Then you use the coin to buy something else. Ultimately, in this build, what you probably want is a golden landlubber and then a golden paint smudger, or really, why not multiple paint smudgers? Because every spell you cast means more blood gems. Another important part of this build that you want to find is going to be Geomagus Rugug. While you're cycling through, while you're generating minions, you want to generate as many Quillbore as possible. The reason for this is simple. If you generate blood gems for free while doing this, and then you play them on Rugug, you've got it. More blood gems to move around, more insanity. You are just going to have blood gems bouncing all over the board with this build, and you're just going to reach a truly epic proportion. And if Geomagus hasn't been nerfed by the time this is posted, you now have a large Divine Shield minion also. So hey, why the hell not? Big value, let's go with it. And I have to mention it, if we are going to be doing this where we're bouncing blood gems all over and we're going to be generating a lot of blood gems, your board is going to start to get packed. You're going to have a hard time deciding what to keep and what to cut. There's going to be some tough choices made. We're going to have the key minions we need. We need to have the Landlubber. We need to have the Paint Smudgers. We need to have the Geomagus. Then we need to cycle and or have cards like Moonbacon Jazzer to give all those blood gems +1 health. Prickly Piper to give them +1 attack. These are things that are going to give us more value. But then there's a slew of other cards you might want to have. Soul Rewinder, so you can take cards out of the shop that will do damage to you to give you potential value like you used to with Landlubber. This can still work if you get lucky with the right shops. Peggy, Landlubber's a pirate. If you have a Peggy and a Landlubber on the board, you're going to get additional buffs while doing this. Peggy is not probably being on the end state of your board, but Peggy to at least buff your Landlubber to epic proportions. Peggy will carry you through the mid game. And then finally, any cleave at all. Think of all the cleaves you want. We're going to list them all later. All of the cleaves, because you're going to be bouncing blood gems around all over the place. And then using the minion Necrolite, you can move a lion's share of them, just a metric ton of blood gems onto this cleave, whichever cleave it is, or multiple cleaves, and go completely nuts. This build has a lot of potential and can get really big really fast. And realistically, you can sit on tier 4 and make this board work. You can win the game sitting on 4, just doing this. Later, there's a lot of tech cards and a lot of good things you want to get at the higher tiers. So once you're dominant, why not go up? But you can just sit down on 4 and win with this Menagerie build. And we're going to cover one last direction minion for neutral / Menagerie build here. And that is going to be Nalaa the Redeemer. This tier 6, 5/7. Whenever you cast a tavern spell, give a friendly minion of each type +2/+1. This is a permanent buff that will go out to everything on your board, at least one of each tribe. So if you have multiples of the same tribe, you're not going to get them all. It's going to be random which ones you get. But as you narrow your board down to one of each type, it will give you this permanent stacking buff. It can really get out of control and quite effective. This build for a little while has kind of fallen off and not been used as much because it's harder to get spells in the tavern up until recently. Now that Landlubber is back, set tier 3, it's a 4/5, so it's got a better stat line. It's only in elemental pirate lobbies, but the tavern offers an extra tavern spell each refresh, means your Nalaa now has access to more spells every single roll, which means you can buff your board more and more. Now, it doesn't really matter what minions you use in a Nalaa build. They're all going to work, but something like Landlubber will make them easier. You want as much spell generation as possible, but really, any of the minions we're going to talk about later in the key section will work, but the generating ones will do the best job because then it'll give you just additional buffs to give to them and the rest of your board later on. So these are the kind of minions you're going to be looking for. We're going to cover all that exactly later because they really work in every build, but there is another minion you do kind of want if you're playing Nalaa. If you're buffing the hell out of your board with spells, why not get a tier 5 2/4 Enscrolled Fungus? Has +1/+2 for each spell you've cast this game, which you're casting, I don't know, 30, 50, 100 spells. Scrolled Fungus will take you a long way. There is a big value in this because every spell you're casting, which is busting the rest of your board, will buff this also for a decent rate. So nothing wrong with Enscrolled Fungus. Now, usually when I do these guides, I talk about heroes you should play and who works with what, but let's face it, any hero works with any Menagerie build. We don't even need to get into that because they're all very viable. But Nalaa has a couple advantages. If you go with the newer spell heroes, you're going to get a big bump because of how they work If you look at a hero like Dr. Holiday, now this is for 1 gold, you get Blessing of the Nine Frogs, get a random tavern spell. So, especially once you have Nalaa, for 1 gold, you're going to get a random spell. That could be a 1 cost gold. That could be a 6 cost gold. You're only paying 1 for it. So generating with the Dr. Holiday is a big deal if you have to be playing Nalaa. It uses that in Scrolled Fungus. You get extra value. So definitely look at, if you're playing Dr. Holiday, keep an eye out for Nalaa as a possibility. And also, if you happen to be playing Tel'Thalon Bloodwatcher, this hero's power is Reliquary Research. Every 3rd tavern spell you buy costs 1 less. So that means if you're buying a bunch of spells, you're going to have that cost reduced by 1 for every 3 spells. This isn't a great hero, but if you happen to be playing it and you're offered the Nalaa line, it is cheaper to get spells, which is always a good thing. So definitely worth considering because you do not play this hero as much before, and a Nalaa is a very good build for a Tel'Thalon build. And just a small fun tidbit you could do if you happen to see the spell Buddy Up, or if you're playing the hero ETC and you are offered the minion Magnus Mana Storm, this tier 5 4/4 is after you buy a card, add one of the same tier to the tavern. If you buy a tavern tier 1 spell out of the shop, they're almost all tier 1 and 2s. It will only replace with a tier 1 spell. So just roll a couple times, get that tier 1 spell in the shop, and then just keep buying it. It will keep replacing itself with a tier 1 spell that is almost always going to be 1 or 2, which means you're going to get your maximum possible buffs for the gold you have every turn. Now let's talk key minions. So we know the direction minions that say, hey, we're definitely playing Menagerie. What would we like to fit in? Now, you should play whatever you find. I don't care if you don't have the perfect minion, make it work, just play with it. If you change your mind every 2 turns on a minion, eventually you're going to lose because they never get big enough. Yes, a Foe Reaper is beautiful if you find it, but if you've got a 90/90 Selemental, that's horrible, I know, and it's turn 13 and you're offered a Foe Reaper, are you going to sell your 90/90 Selemental for a Foe Reaper? Probably not. Now, if it's turn 9, hopefully it's not a 90/90 Selemental, I would still be tempted to sell the Selemental for the Foe Reaper. I'd probably sell something else long before, but I really don't want to waste those stats. That's a lot of power going away there. But at the same time, if it's only turn 9, you're going to be able to build that Foe Reaper up to where it's almost that big, if not bigger, and it's going to hit multiple targets, so that value is going to be much more well expressed when you're using a Foe Reaper versus a Selemental. It's a question of when do you cut it. Just don't keep changing your mind about the ones you want. This is a mistake that's easy to make because you keep getting offered better minions as you tier up, and you're like, well, crap, I want to replace these garbage minions, but the new minions are 1/10 the size. Then maybe not switch to the minion that's 1/10 the size unless there's a damn good reason that that's going to help you win. A 90/90 Selemental is great, but if your opponent's got 200 elementals, it doesn't matter. But if you're then going to switch them to, say, Transmuted Bramble Witch, which might be a 3/3 before any buffs hit it, it's going to turn their 200 into a 3/3 plus any buffs you have on it. Obviously, it's all a question of timing and what these minions do if you want to switch them and when to switch them. So one of the most common minion types you want in this type of board are cleave minions. These are minions whose attack hit more than one target. We're talking Blade Collector, Wildfire, Foe Reaper, and to a little lesser extent, Niazawa. Niazawa is better and worse because it doesn't hit the target next to the top minion. It hits something random. Now, sometimes that's great because your opponent's playing around taunts and there's nothing you can do about hitting the minions you want. So Niazawa gives you a chance to snipe exactly what you want to hit. But there's other times when your opponent just can't play around it because they've got too many important minions, or they're just playing poorly and sitting next to their taunt is their Titus Rivendare in a beast build and you're about to murder their day. It's situational, but you definitely want to have as many of them typically as possible. Right now, spells are incredibly powerful, so anything that generates spells in a Menagerie board is great also. Just like Cleaves, if you can have Ignition Specialist, Mystic Spore Bats, Bilivaz, and to a much lesser extent, Trembling Trolley. I like all of them except Trolley. The reason why I don't like Trolley is if your board is slowly getting bigger and bigger and bigger stat-wise, Your Trolley's an Avenged 4. It means 4 other of your minions have to die before Trolley dies for you to get any spells out of it. So Trolley is definitely on the low end of what I want to have, but if it's big enough and it can survive and kill things with it, who cares? Take it, use it, and if it gets you spells, all the better. You can run a Murloc package, you can have a Baskill, a Bream counter in your hand, and while you're cycling cards, occasionally just cycle a Murloc here and there, so that's bigger. You've got minions like Warpwing that are going to be able to smack and not take any damage and just run in and murder things. You've got Corrupted Myrmidon. If you're throwing buffs across your entire board, he's going to take whatever stats you put on him and double them. You've got Relentless Murghul, which will sit in the back, soak up those stats, and during the course of the combat, maybe even hopeful to get reborn. Once again, it's an Avenged 4, so it's a little harder to pull off, but since he's been buffed up enough and he's still got Venom, it's still a very good prospect if he can survive. And finally, in a pinch, any dual tribe card works. Sometimes it's hard to find cards to fit into a Menagerie board just because of the minions you keep finding. You're not finding anything good of certain tribes. And while there's some key minions you're looking for, you can't find any of them. Sometimes those dual tribe cards can really serve a purpose, especially cards like Transmuted Bramblewitch. This is an easy sell. It's already in a massive counter card, turning your opponent's minions into 3/3s, but it's also a Quillbore Elemental, so it's serving that purpose of being multiple tribes. So now you can have another Elemental on your board while you have the Transmuted Bramblewitch eating up the Quillbore spot, and they might not even be in the lobby. And hey folks, I want to thank everyone for watching. I love doing this, and the channel's been growing a whole lot lately. That's because of all of you watching and coming back and enjoying content. I just want to say thank you very much. If of course, if you could show this to anybody, pass this on to anyone who this might be helpful, or at least have fun with it, it really does help the channel grow. And I'm really trying to make this better as much as possible. So I'm always open to any ideas, comments, things you might have. I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to do any of it. I also might do all of it. So throw ideas at me in the comments below because it never does hurt. Thank you very much. I love doing this, and you all are making this a lot easier to do. Now, typically, I cover heroes and spells in their own sections here, but really, we're playing Menagerie. Almost every hero should work. We've covered a couple with Nalaa, but there's no... If you're playing Menagerie, it doesn't matter. Obviously, you don't want to play heroes like Flurgle, who are, just giving you one tribe if you can help it. But Menagerie works with any hero, even with the Flurgle, because if hell, it would help fuel your one Murloc package you have going on. There's definitely ways to make every hero work, and the same with spells. You're playing Menagerie, you're playing some of everything. Typically, you're going to find any spell works for you, so we don't really need to cover these in any special way here. But folks, that's it. That's Menagerie in a nutshell. I covered a lot of things. There's no way I can cover it all because we'd be here all day, but I've covered the highlights, the most important by far, definitely the biggest ones you're going to see the most, a couple more obscure ones, but for the most part, this is Menagerie. I used to love playing Menagerie. Menagerie was one of my favorite ways to build a game. I still do it a good bit, but I don't do it anywhere near the frequency I used to because it's just been having a hard time lately. Right now, there are some tribes that are just so strong, it's hard to not want to play those power-hungry tribes that just murder people. But Menagerie is still very effective and can do the job for you because now you can cherry pick all the minions from everyone else's builds. You really can make something work. Thanks for watching all. I really appreciate it. I hope you had a good time. Thank you very much. Please, comments, all that good stuff, because I really like to hear what's going on and what you all think of this and what we can do different. Thanks again, all. I'll catch you next time. Later.